Good morning or good evening, actually, Alex. How are you today?
I'm really good, thanks, Guy. Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for joining me. I think it's your turn really to come on my show, isn't it? I've been on yours a couple of times now, so I thought it'd be interesting to share with people how you became awake or what made you start questioning what we would refer to as conspiracy theories or questioning narratives. So I thought it'd be an interesting role reversal for me to ask you a few questions.
Awesome. Well, yeah, thanks for having me, Guy. And your videos were popular on my channel, and you've shared your waking up journey. And as we said, it's just an amazing time to be alive. To we could have these conversations with lots of people waking up. But I've honestly had a pretty crazy life with a lot of pendulum swings from one side to the other, which I'll get on it to, I guess. So I was always into conspiracies, and firstly for me, it was when we first got the internet, which was back in about grade six, 1999, I think, here in Australia. And for some reason, I wanted to Google like UFOs and aliens. And I look back on that now and I was like, what on earth kind of made me interested in that? But I guess that sort of shows I was always open minded and wanted to learn more about how the world works, right? And then throughout high school, I was really sporty and into health. And I wanted to know, well, how does the body work? And then how does the mind work? I got a job in a pharmacy and then end up studying and became a pharmacist for a bit. But I always had a foot in both camps of the health and nutrition and the pharmaceutical world. And while I was studying at uni, there were instances where things that were being taught, I was like, hold on, I already don't think that that's true. And, I don't really know much already. So there was a few of those moments even during the studies. And then I was a pharmacist for 5 or 6 years, and just saw more and more that that world was corrupt. And then I quit in 2017 to start a YouTube channel.
Sorry, Alex, could you give us any examples of what you witnessed to really substantiate the theory that we all have? And I think it's pretty well founded that it is a corrupt industry.
Yeah.
What really brought that to the forefront?
I think some of the first big ones I learned about was like cholesterol and the sugar industry, and watching docos about all that and how that got pushed, and the demonization of healthy animal fats that are from nature that people have eaten forever, and then the cholesterol and the statin drugs, which were our number one sellers, and they are all over the world, right? And if you actually dig down in those studies, people think that they're taking these things to reduce their chance of a heart attack or a stroke, whatever. But if you actually look into like the broad numbers, it's something like, we need to treat 1,000 patients for 30 years to stop one heart attack. And then you look at the cost of that to the taxpayers and it's in the millions and millions. So how much does it actually even cost to treat that one heart attack when it happens? So none of it even makes sense when you dig into it. Antidepressants was another big one, and most psychiatric drugs, they can definitely numb people and that type of thing. And some people find they help. But all that evidence is like, to get a drug on market, you've just got to beat placebo. So if the placebo says 49% of people found it beneficial and the other drug is like 51, 52%, that's all you've got to do to prove that a drug works. And then you add into how they cut people out of a study or whatever, and they can always jig it so that it beats placebo. And then you've got the long list of side effects that come with these medications. So when you really drill down into it, none of it really makes sense. And I now believe that nature and exercise and detoxing and getting all the poisons out of the environment that are hurting us with are the only ways to heal. So personally, I broke my back playing Aussie rules footy in 2015, and so I kind of had a slippery slope with painkillers. A lot, that story is pretty familiar for people in the US, maybe not so much in Australia, where they really messed me up. And lucky, I kind of knew that was happening and how to get off them, because they want to put you on, more drugs to get off those drugs and all that type of thing. So that was a really wild ride for me, seeing it from both sides there as well. And then obviously the real big one, when I'd already quit pharmacy and been YouTubing for 3 years, and then COVID came around and we'd never used these technologies in humans, and telling everyone they're safe and effective and giving them to kids and pregnant women, which is the number one no-no for any medication. And that was, I got strikes on YouTube for that at the time. So that's probably a few examples of from the pharmacy world.
So, did you see the same old names popping up when you were working in pharmacy? Was it the same brands constantly?
A lot of drugs come off patent, and that was really happening when I was there. So a lot of the top sellers, like the statins and that type of thing, were then the generics. But yeah, it was the Pfizers and the Mercks and
Yeah.
those big companies, I guess, that got all those big medications and pushed them hard in what the 70s and 80s, and they get 20, 30-year patents, something like that, and then they roll over to generics. Yeah.
Did you see a huge increase in people taking medication for mental health issues?
It's always hard to say to individual pharmacy because like we're in an area that was kind of growing fast as well, but absolutely our script numbers were going crazy. And that's one of the things I hated about it. We were just pumping out two, three, some days 500 scripts a day between two pharmacists. And at that point, you really don't have time to even to check things or interventions. And my boss was lovely guy. I don't want to speak badly about him, but he was just kind of in the matrix a fair bit. Don't worry about it too much, mate. It's just that type of attitude. And I was selling my soul, and I was already kind of into a bit of technology on the side, conspiracy, gold and silver, a bit of crypto, and that's what I started the YouTube channel about, and that just kind of grew and grew from there. And these days, we talk more and more about this alternate history, conspiracies, truth, or whatever you want to call it, just a bit of everything. Yeah.
So UFOs were really the beginning for your journey. Do you think that that was because a lot of sci-fi was out there at the time? And I don't know about you, but growing up, it was Star Trek, Star Wars. I was fascinated by it all, and it kind of lends itself to looking into those particular rabbit holes.
Possibly. We weren't allowed to watch a lot of that stuff as kids in our household. I remember mum and dad would always have the X Files on as I went to bed, and I wasn't allowed to watch it.
Yes.
And we weren't even allowed to watch The Simpsons. We were kind of a bit sheltered, I guess, as kids. Um, I don't know if my grandpa has talking about seeing UFOs. He's no longer with us. My grandma was also very open-minded, and she's written a book about the sixth sense that runs in our family and all the paranormal experiences that she's had, particularly as a career nurse with people at the end of their life and going into the light and seeing relatives and coming back after dying and all that sort of stuff. So I guess maybe I got a bit of open-mindedness from them, and having a few of these conversations. I don't know if you've heard of the Port Arthur massacre, Australia's biggest.
No.
So in 1996, and I believe that this was a completely staged event. 33 people were shot and killed, and that was why they de-armed Australia.
33.
Yeah, so 33. So it happened on the 28th and 29th of April, which is the lead up to April 30, which is a really important date in the satanic calendar. And so 29th of the 4th, 29 4 the 33. And then they sentenced him on the 22nd of the 11th after keeping him in solitary confinement because he wouldn't plead guilty. So 22nd of the 11th, another 33. So this is just riddled with the numerology. And the official story is that this guy with a low IQ, 66, like the mental aptitude of a 13-year-old, went into this cafe, this tourist spot, and shot up all these tourists and shot like 19 people in the head within 90 seconds. It's got all the, markings of a professional hit operation and all that type of thing. And there was people that survived it, that lived there, that knew him, that said it wasn't him. And they spent 20 years trying to get the truth out before YouTube, before podcasts. And you can still go and find their old videos where they're speaking out about this. So, yeah.
Do you think Bondi Beach is another example?
I think that Bondi was more real. I think there were people there, absolutely, that were part of some sort of operation. I tend to think that some of the stuff that's come out now suggests that they went over to, I think it was Thailand, to be trained in an area that's known for radicalization. They went there a few weeks before this happened. They were already on the ASIO watch list. How you're allowed to own 6 high-powered rifles in Australia that has the strictest gun laws when you're on a watch list is beyond me. And a lot of the time, those people that go there to be radicalized, a lot of that is trained, right, by the intelligence agency. So I don't think it's one of those false flags that didn't happen or maybe people didn't die, but I absolutely orchestrated. In the year leading up to it in Australia, there was half a dozen smaller false flags that all got disproven and debunked by the mainstream media, with Israel trying to say these are anti-Semitic attacks, that type of thing. And it all came out that they'd either faked them, it was just debunked and it wasn't a hate crime, it was just kids vandalizing something random, fake bomb threats that weren't even real. So there was this big lead up in Australia to this push for new anti-Semitism laws and that type of thing. Yeah.
Where do you think this is headed? Why do you think we're seeing this? Because it's happening here in the UK as well.
I think we're already heard talks now in Australia of the IDF having their own private military force on the ground in Australia. So, and we've got the ICE agents, which are trained by Israel
Oh,
and Mossad in America. So, is this all just? I tend to think the whole AI and all the tech that's going to be kind of run out of Israel and they'll insulate themselves. I tend to think there's something like this happening. It's all this one world police, and anyone that's a dissident that disagrees ends up in a Tartaria style psych home for re-education. Or I think this is where they want it to all go, but I don't think they're going to get away with it.
it's funny you mentioned that. I was listening to something yesterday. It was a story about well, the claim is that this is the last Tartarian. I can't remember for the life of me his name, but it's here we go, Mikhail Sakharov, and he's the last documented Tartarian. And on his deathbed, he shared with his grandson everything that was passed down to him from his father. And his father had blueprints and documents and diaries and journals on architecture, resonance and frequency, and how they were constructing bell towers, and the connection with how that energy is harnessed in the same way as the Helmholtz resonator, and he was making comparisons to that. And I think he's in his early 20s, and somebody had told somebody else that he had a lot of documentation on the old world architecture. And the
Mm.
police came, raided the house, searched everywhere, found documents in the mattress, took the documents, took his father away. And the official story is that he died during transit to the prison.
It's crazy, isn't it? It's just stuff
Mm.
happens over and over again. And yeah, Tartaria is another one of my favorite rabbit holes and another really wake up moment. And I don't think we know exactly what happened if there's been multiple resets, but all we know is that they're lying about our history, right? And Australia is just absolutely a prime example,
Mm.
as I'm sure you've covered and Campbell covers a lot, because our history is so young. And so they need to kind of lie even more about it. And some of these underground tunnel networks here that they even acknowledge are just unbelievable. And these are in every capital city.
Yeah.
Um, just crazy.
What do you think will happen long term with Tartaria? Do you think that now it's got too big for them to continue to dismiss? Do you think they will have to, admit it or disclose information?
I guess the ideal scenario for us, isn't it, is that truth continues to keep coming out to the point where it's just crystal clear that everything we're told, whether it's, talking about health and the hospitals look completely different in 10 to 15 years' time. Does education and the kids actually get taught? And we all start to put together all the books we have on Tartaria and the photos and we make a new curriculum. Do kids even go to schools? Is it done in a decentralized manner through the best podcasts and material makers? And you think about these continuous communities like Aboriginal people that just pass on this knowledge and they tell that it's impossible. It's really important to not jazz this up and keep it word for word and pass this down accurately. Who knows how knowledge gets passed down in future? But yeah, I think if there's overwhelming evidence, more and more kids of this younger generation are just not believing or trusting anything from the government and mainstream, and they're getting their information from now TikTok or Upscrolled has got to number one now, which was created by a Palestinian and an Australian. Have you seen that the last few
No,
days? It's
no, I
an
haven't.
alternative to TikTok because people were fed up with the censorship on TikTok and that it's been bought by Larry Ellison, who's a Zionist.
Mm,
So this Aussie and this Palestinian put together Upscrolled, and it's already got to the number one app within a few days.
up
Yeah,
scroll. I haven't even heard of that.
yeah. I just signed up this morning, and yeah, let's hope that's a trend that continues because I reckon you would have noticed this too. When Rumble really took off, I think that was one of the things that forced YouTube to loosen up a bit of their
Yeah.
censorship. Maybe we definitely need Rumbles and the BitChutes and the Odysseys, right, in case they ever cut it again. But I think Upscrolled and then the Rumbles and the BitChutes and hopefully we get maybe a new Facebook or these are just these things I hope that are going to continue to happen where we have people pop up that are outside the control grid and just allow truth to network and flourish and it happens fast these days. So yeah, that's what gives me a lot of hope.
That's the one good thing about social media for all of the negative aspects to it. And I have no doubt that it's causing problems with people's mental health. And it concerns me that people spend so much time on there. I'll often get messages from people that say, and I don't see them till the following day, but they'll say something like, "Oh, I just thought I'd share this with you," and it's like 2 o'clock in the morning. And I'm thinking, what? Or they'll say, "Oh, I really should go to bed now, but I just wanted to ask you a question." And I look at it's gone midnight. And I'm thinking, you're on your screen before you go to bed, and
Yeah.
often I'll see the same people that are constantly sharing information and posts throughout the day, almost as if they're permanently online. And that concerns me. Of course, what concerns me more is when they say, "Oh, I don't really have time to read," or "I don't have time to go out much," or "I was going to join a gym, but I'm too busy." And you see them constantly online, and I'm thinking, this is causing harm. This really is causing harm, and the bullying as well. You imagine as a kid, we got it at school. Obviously, I'm a lot
Mm.
older than you, but it finished when you walked through the front door. Now it doesn't. You can be bullied 24/7, hit from all sorts of angles, and the amount of people that must have taken their lives because of social media, I think is something that if they really cared, if they really did care, then that would be addressed. But on a positive note, even though, for example, with myself, I know I'm shadow banned on Facebook, the number of people that share my posts, at least that gets the information out there far and wide. And by the time something's taken down, thousands of
Yes.
people have already seen it. And it's the speed, isn't it, in which we can share this information?
Yeah, well, I wonder with that shadow banning, I've for the first time a week or two ago noticed a video on YouTube, the views go down. And then it was actually the video I did on Bondi. It was going gangbusters, like 15,000 views in the first few hours, and then it went sideways. So they don't delete it. But then the likes and the comments keep going up. So then I'm wondering, well, maybe this is just racking up views, but they don't want it to look
Yes.
popular in the search. They want to send people to the mainstream articles. So I kind of wonder about that as well these days. But on Twitter, people have been showing the code and asking AI, how much have I been suppressed? Have you seen that doing the rounds?
No, I haven't. I don't go on there. I
Ah,
don't. I've got an account, but I don't go on.
someone figured out what you need to ask Grok to say how much am I being suppressed or boosted by the algorithm and why. And it was saying, this person's boosted because they're, pro-Israel or whatever, and this person's being decreased 90% because they cover controversial conspiracy topics. So someone figured out a way to work out how Elon and the people in control are boosting and censoring, which was interesting. But yeah,
I kind of, in the back of my mind, can't help thinking that X is a platform that puts everybody into, um, I suppose, one category, and that is we're speaking out. And you've got them all on one platform so they can be monitored. And it's almost like Santa's kind of naughty list. There is one place you can go where anybody can say whatever they like without it being taken down or banned. And of course, this can be seen. So they can actually have a list in front of their very eyes of who's speaking about what and who they need to be watching. And I wonder if that was actually behind it all.
yeah, I agree with that, but I also think there's that deeper layer to it where NSA and Snowden, they've probably been monitoring everything on Facebook and all the
Yeah.
platforms and all our private mentions, and have us already profiled. And what are they going to do with that? Who knows? But I don't think we can live in fear.
No.
But at the same time, someone said to me, you speaking up a lot about some controversial stuff, doesn't it worry you or whatever? But there's thousands of people on TikTok and podcasts and YouTube and having these conversations and sending their friends these memes. And then you do a video, it gets 100,000 views. 100,000 people are now aware that this thing is real and engaged with it. So I just don't see how they can put that many people in concentration camps or whatever.
Yes.
And if they wipe us all out with some sort of reset, there's nothing we can do. And I don't think we can live in fear of that either.
You're right. I mean, that's where they want us, isn't it? constantly living in fear, very low vibration, and we're kind of subdued then, aren't we? We're easier to control if we're frightened. I don't know what it's like there, but here we've now had 14,000 arrests for comments made on social media, and some of them are just liking or sharing someone else's post. Is that happening over there?
It just started a few weeks ago with the new laws. There was a guy, yeah, for a Facebook post, there was a guy for a tattoo on his leg. So, if you got a certain symbol tattooed there 20 years ago, and now the laws have changed, what are you meant to do about that? And the worst thing with that case was it was another Aussie that dobbed him in, like on the beach, ring up the cops. And again, it makes you wonder how much of this is staged for the media and
Yeah.
stuff. But yeah,
And so that's kind of retrospective, isn't it? I mean, how does that work?
well, that's what they're saying with even these laws. They want them to be retrospective. So if I did a video about something a year ago that was allowed, now it's not. They're even saying criticism of Israel or Netanyahu might actually just be illegal full stop now in Australia.
That is ridiculous, isn't it? That really is, and it's just getting out of control, isn't it? And the problem is, the more they do things like this, the more people are looking at Israel and seeing what's really going on there. For me, it just seems like some kind of Harry Potter sorting hat, where anything bad that's going on is sort of filtered and sorted through Israel, and I don't see. Well, I don't understand why people aren't seeing what we see.
Yeah. I guess yeah, I think sometimes, because I've kind of been on that path where you go full circle of I'm going to wake everyone up and then realizing you can't wake people up. They have to wake up on their own terms in their own time. And it normally has to be something that happens to them personally that really shakes their reality to question things, whether that was, something that happened with COVID or the jab, or has to be something kind of personal. But you can always plant seeds. And then when something does happen, people go, oh, well, geez, all those people I've heard talk about that, now I've seen something firsthand. So I absolutely think knowledge is power, and we've got to plant these seeds and have these discussions. But yeah, you need something pretty crazy to shake your reality. And for me, yeah, World War II and learning about the history of the Rothschilds setting up Israel, and some of those names we're not allowed to talk about still. I don't know what platforms you're putting this out on, Guy, but yeah, all the history around
YouTube.
World War One or
Yeah.
two. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I've done a deep dive into that, and the more you look into it, the more you can see that actually they were all working together. Um, and of course, the Rothschilds have funded both sides of a lot of wars over the years, and their
Yeah.
interest appears to have started from the Napoleonic Wars when they started to, offer money to the monarchy to help them finance it. And from what I understand, they weren't so interested in the repayment terms. They wanted to cede the heir to the throne from that point on, starting with Victoria. And
Yes.
yeah,
Yes.
and you can see it today. People often put comparisons up. They'll put a side profile of someone like Jacob Rothschild against Prince William, and the similarities are incredible. But I kind of went through a phase where, when I was younger, where I thought Winston Churchill was, one of the most incredible people that had ever lived in British history, and someone we should be proud, very proud of. And then I flipped 180 degrees and actually thought, I've looked into this a bit more closely now, and I can actually see that what the Allies did is far worse than what anybody else did. And then I dug a little bit deeper and discovered that actually they're two actors on a stage and
Mhm.
working together, possibly even related.
Oh, 100%. As you say, you after watching, I think it was Europa, The Last Battle, that
Mm,
12-hour doco that paints the other side, you go, holy crap. But then you start to dig in. Well, like, as you say, who actually funded them as well?
mm.
And there's always another layer. They're always pulling the strings of both sides, right? And that gets into bloodlines that you touched on then, and that gets into kind of religion, which is the main. It's just such a huge rabbit hole, and fascinating. And I honestly think that all sort of like religions and teachings are all loosely based on the same philosophies and principles that people get through meditation or eating plant medicines or looking within, it's just like be kind to other people, try and give out more than you take, and these basic principles. And then it gets repackaged, and there's just so many times that whatever religion has been rewritten, and now in more modern times, kind of radicalized, all getting us to this point where I think they want to try and turn a lot of these religions against each other. That's all been done deliberately by the same group as part of their plan and that prophecy, which is everything we're seeing now in the Middle East, right? They want to strike Iran and get this third temple built and all this kind of stuff that they believe in.
I think what religion's been weaponized for a long time, hasn't it? And for me personally, I think they've taken stories, put them together, and found a way in which it can be used to control people, but also generate money as well at the same time. And what I've found, certainly over the last couple of years, more than ever before, is that if someone's going to attack me online, they will always do it if it's severe, because you get the odd NPC, the odd bot or troll, and you don't know even if you're talking to a human. But with regard to actual accounts, genuine accounts, and they contacting me or communicating with me, if they're going to really put the boot in, they tend to include something from the Bible within the comment or the message.
Yeah.
Take Jesus into your life, you piece of shit. Things like that, and full of hypocrisy. And like you said, isn't it supposed to be about love and charity and being there for one another? And I find that some of the most aggressive people I've come across online happen to be the ones that are preaching from the Bible more than anybody else. And I find that weird because at the same time they're saying, well, God sees everything. God is all
Yeah.
knowing. God is watching everything you do. And I think, well, God's just read what you wrote.
Yeah, I
Where's the
know what you
logic in
mean.
that?
It's such a hard one because I do think there's also the opposite, that some of the nicest, most principled people, can be Christians or any
Mm,
religion really, and they're aware that a lot of the churches and a lot of their texts have been corrupted. And as we said, there's plenty of good messages in there. But for me, it was kind of Jordan Maxwell and other people talking about how
hmm
they're all basically a similar story, astrotheology. The sun gets to its lowest point for 3 days and then rises again. Egyptian gods, Set, all these names that all have these meanings describing astrological movements and how they used to keep time and calendars and seasons and when to plant foods. And, when you break it down into those really simple terms that they would have been using it for back in the day, yeah, it's one of those, another light bulb moment as you're going down different rabbit holes, right? When you learn about all that.
It is hard, isn't it, once you start looking into religion, because it's a little bit like I said earlier on with World War II. I went through most of all of my childhood because of my father's views, into perhaps my mid-20s being an atheist. I didn't believe any of it. I just saw it as a book that was making an awful lot of money, that was designed to give law and order before we had law and order. That constant fear if you did something wrong, you were going to burn in hell and so on. So, kind of a very early version of what we have today with regard to law. Um, and then I started looking into it and started to actually think, hold on a moment. I think there's elements of truth in here. I think it's been badly translated on purpose. We know that they've missed a lot of books out that didn't fit the narrative. One of my favorites is the Infancy Gospel of Thomas, which actually covers the missing years, the childhood of Jesus, which
Okay.
is horrific. The children being killed, adults being killed because they did something to upset him, you can see why that was missed out from it. And then the further I dug into it, the more I started to think, hold on a moment, you've got people people that were writing at the time, like Sonica, for example, that were there at that moment, that were writing about absolutely everything, that never mentioned him. They never mentioned this person that was drawing in huge crowds and performing miracles. He's not documented anywhere by any of the writers of the time, like Sonica. Most of the books don't actually tie up as well. And then I started looking at Osiris and thinking, hold on a moment, am I reading exactly the same story? So now I'm left thinking, did Jesus exist or not? Now there'll be people out there say, of course he did, but you can't say, of course he did. You can only say, I think he did. We can't prove any of this unless you're 2,000 years old and were there. But it seems to me like there are throughout different religions and different belief systems, there are so many similar stories, even down to 12 disciples, and that the
Yeah.
33 years old, they appear everywhere. Virgin birth, they're absolutely everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, all we can say is that we don't know, and that's why we have to
Mm,
keep an open mind and never speak in absolutes. Because maybe there was someone called Jesus that did a lot of these teachings, and a lot of it's true. Maybe some of this stuff was happening in Egypt at the same time, and it's different stories and timeline shifts,
yeah.
and
Mm.
they're changing it for their own benefit and narrative. And did they even create a lot of these different languages originally to divide people? There's so many overlaps with these rabbit holes of you got to ask yourself, well, is this being used to control people?
Yeah, I ultimately think it is. And because one of the things that I notice now, going to churches a lot with my wife in cathedrals, we go in to look for things. We're looking for dates or anything that appears out of place. And the first thing you're greeted with is a donation box.
Mm,
It's always money. And you've got, the Roman Catholic Church, the money, the wealth and power there is incredible, enough to make sure that every follower gets a hot meal. And of course, that
yeah,
couldn't be further from their interests. They just want more and more money. What I find strangest of all is with the whole, certainly here, with religion, certainly the Church of England at least, is that they're always asking for money because the church needs a new roof, the church needs money towards its upkeep, and yet at the same time, everything's God's will. So if the church is going to survive or the church is going to close, well, that's God's will, isn't it?
yeah. I mean, the whole money thing you've touched on there is getting to such an extreme now. Even the royal family, people are seeing how much they're struggling to get by, cost of living, and how these people do not do anything that's
Mm.
actually beneficial for populations. And they're saying, why do you? And I remember when we went to the UK, my mum was obsessed with the royals, and I was asking as a kid, I was like, what do these people do? Why have they got this money now? Like, I know you'd tell me back in the day they used to ruin stuff, but it just didn't even compute to me. Maybe that was my brain working differently. But think about, like you said, the wealth that the Vatican has, how they could end world hunger. Um, Let alone the history and the records. Like, what gives these people, the Smithsonian Institute and all that, the
Mm.
right to think that every other human on Earth doesn't have the right to learn about our history and this knowledge and the real artifacts and stuff?
It's it's often considered, it's certainly bounded around a lot here, that the royal family are important because of the tourism, the money that they bring in to the UK. But that actually isn't true. More people now enter the UK to go to a factory shopping village. It's called Bicester Village in Oxfordshire. More people come to the UK to see that than they do Buckingham Palace. So it gives you an idea, doesn't it, of
It's
the
funny you say
interest.
that. Yeah, yeah. I lived there. I lived in around that area. I went and played cricket in 2012, and I was in a tiny little town called Dinton, at a little pub called the Seven Stars. If anyone ever wants to go there, it's the same lady still owns it. Really nice French lady. So that was my stint in England. Yeah,
Bloody hell. It really is a small world, isn't it?
yeah,
Crikey, well, we
yeah.
used to live just near there. We actually lived just up the road, and I worked in Bicester after I left
There you
art
go.
college. Yeah. But it is,
Wow.
it's true. They say, yeah, but they're important for tourism and they bring a lot of money into the country. They don't. That's just not true. And what do they do? And of course, it's not just them, is it? You're not just financing a family. You're financing the extended family and the staff and the security and the upkeep of all of their properties. It's disgusting, and they could change the lives of so many people here. They're what they refer to as their subjects for the
Yeah.
better tonight, and they won't. They won't do that because they're not interested.
Yeah. And similar thing in Australia, where obviously we don't have royals of that, but we've got some of the highest taxation rates, right? So if you're in the highest bracket, you're paying 47%. Plus, we've got the 10% GST, and then everything like petrol and alcohol and cigarettes, whatever's taxed through the roof. So where is all this money going? Like, what are these
Mm,
people in government that sit there and nothing ever really changes, and people are really starting to ask it? And then I think the Australian government was like billions and billions of dollars on these nuclear submarines to America with this contract, and they got told it'll take 20 years to build or something like that, and you'll only get them if we don't need them. We gave $600 million to a country near Indonesia for like their rugby team, and people are starting to go. It's like the USAID thing all over when Elon
oh,
supposedly went in and cleaned it out. But just the wastage here of taxpayers' money when there's people that are just homeless and all these other things that they could use it on. And then you get into the real nefarious stuff that, they're traveling and again, churches and charities and the charity work that they do,
mm.
usually for very nefarious stuff, right?
I always think here that to get knighted, often people are knighted because they've done a lot of work, humanitarian work, or I've come to the conclusion, and I've only got what we know to go on. Obviously, I don't know anyone within the inner circle, but I think to get knighted, you have to do something pretty nefarious. I think to be entered into that world, you've got to be singing from the same hymn sheet as these people. And if we look at some of the
Yeah.
people that have been knighted,
Mm.
there's no way the royal family weren't fully aware of people like Rolf Harris, Jimmy Savile, and so on, what they were up to. There's absolutely no way. In fact, I wouldn't be at all surprised if they weren't actually involved. So what do you have to do to get knighted? And look at David Beckham now. The new improved David Beckham, who doesn't even look like David Beckham anymore.
Yeah.
One minute he's David Beckham, the next minute he's knighted, and now he's stood on the World Economic Forum platform. And he's
Well,
one, not the first person I would think of if I wanted to
no.
listen to a talk on from the World Economic Forum stage. He's not the first person I would imagine to be up there.
No. Well, it's funny you say that as well. And yesterday in Australia, a huge story broke about the policeman that got busted as part of the international satanic pedophile network, and he was 2022 Officer of the Year, which was given out by Rotary. And I know Rotary has a lot of like crossover with Freemasonry and the police and all the judges and this type of stuff. So as you say, it's always these people that kind of, you know, was it Barack Obama got the Nobel Peace Prize who dropped more bombs than anyone, and now Trump wants it, and he's the peace president, and he's bombing more countries than anyone in history, and it's the satanic inversion, isn't it?
Look at the little peace committee that he's put together. As soon as you see someone like Tony Blair on there, you've got to be
Mm,
asking questions about really, you know,
I
what's
know, right?
actually, what is this actually all about? He's the last person that should be involved in anything to do with peace. That, the man's an absolute parasite. But
Mm.
that's just my thoughts on it. So what do you think's going to happen this year? Because people are predicting another outbreak. We've got a fake alien invasion, Project Bluebeam, potentially coming up soon. What do you think's going to happen?
Yeah, I know. Viv's a mutual friend of ours. I spoke to her the other day, and she's yeah, I think she won't mind me saying. I'm doing some full blood work with her because I never obviously got the jab or anything. But these days, yeah, I want to know well how much. Even though I'm doing everything to detox my body,
Yeah.
I still want to know exactly what my baseline levels are, and I think more people should look into that if they haven't, right? So, I mean, just the last few days on the news has been talking about this new virus and that type of thing, but we've kind of seen them try that a few times every few months about a new virus and it doesn't seem to go anywhere. So I don't know if that is going to happen, but absolutely the playbook is there for them to push it on the kids and
Mm,
to make it impossible to go to school without it, and parents aren't in the financial position now where they can quit work. So the decision would then be quit your job and lose all your financial security and probably your home, or give your kid the jab. And that's where I think a lot of people that are on the fence and maybe think it's bad would still get potentially coerced into it. So they can really, get you in a vice with that decision making process if they have to for the next pandemic. I think even without digital ID necessarily. But I think the AI bubble, whether that's a bubble or whether they keep using that to cut jobs, is going to be a big story this year. Because I think AI is kind of in that honeymoon period where it's a bit of a novelty. And yes, it can make pretty cool videos and songs and stuff. But as more and more people wake up, are they going to kind of want things that are made by humans? Or the argument that this is taking up so much energy and we can't even build nuclear reactors and an energy source fast enough and get enough water and cooling, is all that worth it versus just making a song or a movie or paying your graphic designer guy to make your tiles for YouTube again rather than AI. So maybe that pendulum swings back, and I'll be interested to see because there's been so much, hundreds of billions of capital invested in all this AI, right? And if they don't start to make money soon, are they just going to keep pouring money in it? So who knows? I think that's a really interesting one to watch. Um, the Israel Iran thing, I've heard different things where they really want this third temple built by 2027. So that would basically mean they have to destroy it at some stage pretty soon this year to build it by 2027, right? And then just that continual centralization and rolling out of the world government, this world police force, censorship online, anything you say, do you get arrested or do the people push back? And there's already pockets where this is kind of happening. And as you know, even during COVID, there was entire towns where people said, no, we're not enforcing mandates or masks or jabs, no matter what the people at the top say. So that's the sort of people you want to be building a community around and hopefully living near and that type of thing, right?
It's interesting what you said about AI because that appears to be what's the root cause of Trump's desire to take Greenland, that it's
Mm.
going to give him everything he needs, and they want to be the world leader in AI, don't they? But at the same time, like you said, the jobs that are going to be lost as a direct result, and we're all embracing it, but at the same time, it's going to be replacing a lot of people, and I often wonder if we're going to get to a point where somebody's so dependent on it. Perhaps their job requires them to do, or they got their job perhaps in a way in which they shouldn't have done, where the AI is
Yes.
doing their work for them, and they're just regurgitating it. And they wake up one morning and can no longer access that level of informational service without the Neuralink. Now, what do you do?
Yeah, 100%. We're already seeing a problem in Australia with fake degrees from as we've had the mass immigration from these countries and people coming in saying that they're a doctor or whatever, and turns out that they're not. Are they just using AI on the other side of the desk while they see each patient and that type of thing, right? So, yeah, that's a really good point.
It'll be interesting to see how this plays out because people are now using it for advice as well, for counselling. They're actually using it for counselling, and I think AI is only as good as the information you put into it yourself.
Yeah.
But
Well, two things. So, yeah, you touched on mental health before. So, I want to kind of get back to all that and as well as with the AI. But with a bigger question is if AI is just going to replace all our jobs and make humans, feel worthless, again, that gets into the mental health side of things. But do we want it? And I think what I've come to understand is my whole philosophy is are we living in line with nature or not? And this is why more and more people we used to think of the olden days when everyone worked on a farm and grew their own food as like miserable. But how many people do you know now that would do anything to be living on a farm with a group of friends that they like and getting their own fruit, veggies, meat, letting their kids play, helping them build a treehouse? Because a lot of people now can't afford the basics. And so going back to basics is like what people want.
yeah,
So I think there's a big move, whether it's people turning away from pharmaceuticals and going back to natural health things or turning away from AI, maybe that pendulum swings in the same way too. But yeah, with the mental health side of things, I think this is all um, a side effect of the matrix. Right? So I don't believe that taking tablets to increase certain levels of certain chemicals, again, that is, it can numb and it can help in some ways. But I think for a lot of people that I work with, because I do a bit of this kind of healing stuff on the side as well now, um, explaining to people that it's okay to feel depressed because it's not your fault. It's actually the system and the world we live in. That nothing is meant to be like this. The food you eat, you're not meant to be in a little cubicle at a job you don't like under false light. And so many people in Australia are really low in vitamin D, which is one of the main hormones for all these neurotransmitters. and we have these huge campaigns to slip, slop, slap, and never get any sun on your skin. Um, so yeah, just this is the kind of stuff that worries me. That most people, and suicide rates Australia now leads the world. Um, yeah, so this is just kind of scary stuff, that it's just this matrix where people are miserable when they feel that social media pressure that they need to have a house and be all flashy, but it's basically getting impossible to do that now for the average person. You got the younger kids going, I'm never going to be able to afford $1 million house now, which is the average cost in Australia. And they're just getting addicted to the porn or the gambling or whatever, and they don't feel a purpose or a direction to a better life. And this is all being done by design by these evil people, right? And that's kind of what I want people to understand, is that I don't think there's anything wrong with your brain or your brain chemistry. It's actually the environment these bad people have put you in. Get out of that environment, start living differently. And all these studies show that the people with the least in these developing nations that are poor, they're all happy when you go visit them. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, you're right. They're happy with their life, aren't they? They're grateful for everything that they have.
Yeah.
My dad's a little bit like that. He turns 80 in a few weeks, and he always says the same thing. I mean, I haven't seen him for quite a few years. He lives in the Canary Islands, and he always says the same thing, that he wakes up positive every day for one simple reason: he made it through another night. He's got
Yeah.
another day here on Earth, and he's grateful for it. But most people don't wake up like that. They wake up and the first thing they do is worry. They might have been lying awake all night worrying about something. And again, it just keeps us subdued, doesn't it? And all of these antidepressants, they're sticking plasters. They don't actually address the root cause. They just mask some of the symptoms, and often they don't do that particularly well. And sunlight is perhaps one of the best cures, isn't it? Some blue
Yeah.
sky and some sun, and like you said, and then you slap all of these creams on you, and there was, and I don't know if you looked into this with your background in pharmacy, but as soon as we started applying those sun creams and sun lotions, that appears to be the same time that skin cancer became an issue.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. I
and
had a gentleman on and did an episode called The Sun Doesn't Cause Cancer, Sun Cream Does. So, yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
my youngest son always says to people that if you're not, he's very much into eating naturally, eating clean, and looking at what you don't necessarily swallow or inhale, but what actually you put into your skin, because it's
Yes.
going in to your system regardless of which way you put it there. It's still
Yeah.
being absorbed. And he said that if you're not prepared to drink it, why would you rub it into your skin?
Mm. Oh,
If you think it
100%.
through, it's
100%.
true. And
Yeah, and seed oils these days is, I
mm,
think there's more research now around if you're not getting that right combination of like fats to create the integrity of your skin and the cholesterol in the barriers of your skin cells, then it's more likely to burn and cause cancers and that. But when you spoke about sunlight, obviously we've had one of the worst summers here from the chemtrails, and it is so obvious now. And these different cloud staggering formations that just look so unnatural. We've only had a few really good cracker days of summer this year so far, and we're halfway through summer now. And like when I was a kid, I just remember every day it was like most days not a cloud in the sky kind of thing, Australian summer, right? So yeah, that's another way that they're attacking us. But when you look in the blue zones to people that live the longest and they're happiest, one of the most important factors is that reason to wake up in the morning that you just touched on. And if you don't have a purpose in life, the year you're most likely to die is the first year of life, or the year you retire. And so that purpose in life is really important. And for most people, it's almost the opposite. If you're dreading the next day as well, think about what that's doing rather than having nice dreams and
mm,
resetting and that type of thing.
yeah, I totally agree. For me personally, retiring isn't an option. Not financially, because I have a pension, but I don't want to. I want every day to be able to do something that makes a difference, that helps in some way. Even if it is just putting a post up on social media somewhere that resonates with someone who has just woken up. And it can be that one message you put out there that really confirms their beliefs and helps them. And I've sort of given up spending time trying to wake people up, because you're
Yeah.
banging your head against a wall. And now I just think, well, I'd be far better off using that time to help someone who just has.
Yeah, and it's just such a fascinating world we live in, and I don't ever want to retire, but I want to learn something new every day, and that's
Mm,
always kind of been part of my journey. I was always just want to watch docos. I never liked watching TV. I thought it was like I could feel myself getting dumber when certain people that I was, going out with at the time just want to sit there and watch binge Netflix and stuff. And there's a time and place for a good movie and watching some sports still and all that type of thing, right? You've still got to have one foot in the matrix and live a life, but it's just so interesting. And the early days of YouTube before the censorship was awesome, and then obviously Rumble and BitChute, and now again you can pretty much say anything on YouTube. So it's just so much to learn. Why would you ever want to stop learning about where we are and what's actually going on?
yeah, I totally agree with you. And every day is a school day. Every day I do genuinely learn something, but that is because, like you said, we don't sit there staring at the TV all day. I tend to jump on and look at YouTube, and I'm looking for something that either is supporting what I'm currently researching, giving me a bit more information, or helping me, dot a few I's and cross a few T's, or someone sent me a link to something that they think I should take a look at. And I get sent quite a lot of those. So I just have YouTube on, but every now and again, we'll put our feet up and put a film on Netflix to disengage. Otherwise, you
Yes.
spend your entire life down the rabbit hole, and I do need to pop out every now and again,
Yes.
and I think it's nice to have that escapism where you can spend a couple of hours in the evening watching something that doesn't matter.
Yeah, and yeah, you go full circle of like I don't like that. And I know that the bread and circuses and that type of things, but
Mm,
then I think you can actually come back and you can still enjoy it. There's still athletes playing sport that are being authentic and trying their
mm.
hardest, and we've got great sport in Australia, Aussie rules football, that type of thing. So yeah, I still think that you can almost laugh at when you see the programming and the ads that come on the sidelines or in between the viewing and that type of thing, rather than going, oh, I know what that's trying to program and it's bad and rah rah rah. It's just that going with the flow and not living that fear and anger and just. I think humor is one of our most powerful weapons, and you see the power of memes, right?
Yeah, yeah, you're right. Because when you actually laugh, when you really laugh, have a good belly kind of chuckle,
Yeah.
that makes you feel good, and that lasts. That can really
Oh yeah.
boost your day. And how often do people laugh these days? I mean, you put the TV on, the news on, you get in the car, you put the radio on, you buy a newspaper, you're bombarded with very negative information. And of course, you and I are researching not exactly what you would call the nicer side of life. We're looking
Yeah.
into acts of conspiracy against us. And it can be quite a dark place to live. And I think it's important to have something to laugh about, even if
Oh,
it's the fact
100%.
you're laughing at what a mess they've made of trying to make something look believable. At
Yeah.
least we can have a damn good laugh at that. So what do you think? We touched on it earlier on, and obviously you mentioned Viv. Do you think we will see a pandemic? And my thoughts are with yours. It will certainly, if we do, be targeting children.
I honestly don't know. Like, I think they've got a few different cards they can play, and I think that they know that too. And this is why I said before they've kind of tried to push a few, new strain of this or bird flu that, and already. And I think they kind of go like they can tell by their algorithms and that they're like nobody is buying this, so we're gonna have to go back to the drawing board a bit, or get them more traumatized or some other health concern. Because I just, I don't think they can get away with a similar playbook to COVID now. There's too many people that wouldn't comply. So I don't have a crystal ball with that. And maybe they want to run COVID, I've heard, a lot of years earlier before it actually did end up happening as well. So I don't think we can say definitively, yeah, on that front. But one other prediction you asked about this year, I think the darkest rabbit hole is the child trafficking and satanic ritual abuse, and that I've seen that come to light quicker than ever the past 12 months. To the point again where you can talk about this on YouTube and the message is getting out there. So yeah, that's I think that rabbit hole is the hardest one to swallow and realize that it's real. And if that level of evil can be true, well, then the opposite must be true. And that's where we get into, getting to the point where you can now get together with your open-minded friends and just kind of laugh at how ridiculous the world is getting rather than
Yeah.
fearing it. Yeah.
It's always been children, hasn't it, that have been targeted. It's always children. And what's really concerning, and this I believe is connected to Grok, that people have been making images, pornographic images from genuine photos that have been uploaded by people onto Twitter and other platforms, and Grok has been turning those images into very, very realistic, impossible to tell the difference, pornographic images, and because it's not real, no crime is committed. So you can
Mm.
store as many of these images as you like. You can be looking at them all day long. And because there is no ultimate victim, because it's an AI image, people apparently are not going to be prosecuted because essentially no crime is being committed. And I think where's that going then? This. I mean, there are people that here in the UK that have been caught with an incredible amount of images, and they're not doing jail time.
Yeah, I think, yeah, I mean, that's obviously something we don't want to happen. And there should be easily measures that Grok and these AIs can put in
Hmm.
place, these companies, to stop that. But I think ultimately we know that these rituals and what these people want involves real children, and so that's what needs to be the big focus to bring attention to and stop the corrupt cops and judges that have been covering all this up for years. But it's starting to come out, right? And you're starting to see these arrests. You're starting to see dozens of victims go on different podcasts in their local countries and name names. And these people have been through hell and back. They've got nothing to lose, almost to the point, they don't fear death kind of thing if it can save children. And I think that's one of the most exciting things that at the bottom of all these rabbit holes is these very evil group of people controlling things and the abuse to children. If we stop that, I think their whole system falls apart. Yeah.
The problem with that is that, as you said, it's the people right at the very top that are involved in this, that are orchestrating it. So the judges turn a blind eye because they're involved and because people have got dirt on other people. And they're just not, until now, people just aren't getting prosecuted because of the power of some of the people that are actually, involved in this. And I think it's been going on forever.
I think look at how quickly there's even been some of these instances in Australia where like true crime style podcasts and researchers like myself on certain issues have brought these issues to light, and then it spreads very quickly, and all of a sudden you've got a mass of people in that local population that are now aware of who's the crooks and the baddies and the sickos. And we've already seen it in Australia. The Prime Minister get chased out of a town by all the farmers on tractors. And we've seen, Bill Gates and these people that can't walk down the street. So even if the people at the top are using the politicians and the Bill Gateses and all that as their puppets, people are just going to stop listening to them. They can't walk down the street. They can't have a press conference. People aren't even watching TV if they do have a press conference. I think this is just this gradual reduction of power where people will start listening to people that are authentic, trying to find the truth, like you and I, figuring out who actually can heal people, medicine and health wise, rather than going to a doctor. So all this is just the kind of change of that pendulum shift that's definitely happening.
Who do you think sits at the very top, or what?
Oh man, right. So I think when you really drill down to it, it is only good and evil, and everything is energy. So David Icke makes that argument about reptilians and interdimensional, and there's been people that have said I've seen shapeshifters. Who knows? Maybe that's one aspect of it. Annika Lucas, who I had on the show, who said she'd been at the ritual ceremonies and even had to drink the blood, said that the face is distorted in a more demonic way. And it was more of a demonic possession that she's seen happen at these rituals and that type of thing. So is it just that, or is it both? A combination of more than that we don't know about? Um, I don't really know, but I think ultimately it's that negative evil energy. Like who wants to be a psychopath and behavior like that versus there's more resources on this planet for everyone to have abundance and everyone to treat each other well and everyone to be happy and healthy versus these few having trillions of dollars and sitting on their gold thrones while there's absolute, you know, to the point now where most people on Earth, even in the developed countries, are pretty miserable.
Yeah.
Um, it's a tough time at the moment. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And it looks like it'll get worse before it gets better. I think we're in for a bumpy ride.
Mm, absolutely. But again, it's not a bumpy ride if you've got your group of friends and you're getting by okay and you sit back and you're watching this laugh and you're aware of what is happening rather than, oh, the world's crumbling. Well, the old system is crumbling and it needs to.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So do you think their days are numbered?
I I think that ultimately good always has to win because otherwise there would be nothing, right? If you zoom right out and, if evil was just always destroys everything, how can there be anything like any places to live, any good people? Like, where does, yeah, that's the kind of way I like to think about it. I think the universe and consciousness is always trying to learn and grow, and you actually need that bad. If everyone was, happy, it would be like one of those movies where everyone's the same and nothing ever happens and whatever. So you kind of need that yin and yang in life, but something I think with more power and knowledge than us has that is evil has kind of overlaid and created this matrix and all these systems that control us now. But it's not again that nature, that natural law of the way things are. Yeah.
What do you think happens in the end when we turn the lights out?
Well, I've done a lot of plant medicines, and I feel that they kind of take you at least to a different realm. I don't know if it's the same realm you go to afterlife, but yeah, I just think that our consciousness continues on. And this is just a physical body and our consciousness. Some people want to call it God, some people want to call it your soul, the spark of life. Something makes all living things conscious to react and move and recreate, right? So I think there's something in us that gives us that consciousness, and it goes back to somewhere else or just drifts into another dimension. It maybe goes to a higher one if you've learnt more of your karmic lessons and came here for what you came here for. Maybe it goes to a tougher life if you haven't been the best person. Uh, who knows? But I just don't believe it just goes to all black and there's completely nothing, because what would be the purpose of coming here just for a small time in the grand scale of everything? I don't know, but what are your thoughts on that?
Same as yours, actually. I don't think that we are just here to reproduce because we appear to have this spark or this connection. And I think many years ago, it was a lot stronger. I think that is partially why they chemtrail. I think that they're
Mm,
blocking some sort of connection with the heavy metals. I think it's not just about dimming the sun, but it's about blocking our connection. I think
yeah.
that's a strong part of it. And
Just quickly. Oh,
mm,
sorry, you finish. Yeah, you
no,
finish.
no, you're right. No, go ahead.
I was going to say I've got one friend who is very good at astral traveling to the point where he's proven to me that he's gone to see things in another room and that sort of thing. So the fact that people can do that type of thing shows you that there's another way that your consciousness can move through another world that's not this world. Yeah.
Well, we all experience telepathy to an extent, don't we? We've all had those experiences where you're talking about somebody and they suddenly ring. Or I've had it before. I used to have an art gallery, and I would be talking about someone that hadn't been in for a little while, and they'd walk through the door while I was talking about them. Or I go to message someone, and they message me at the same time. And this isn't someone that I was in the middle of a conversation with. This is someone I haven't spoken to for a while. And I think we were able to do that on a much greater scale. And I often wonder if we all had that ability and we all thought the same thing at the same time, can we manifest?
I think we've definitely been genetically, or even, what's the right term? De-evolving.
We've been
So done.
stifled, haven't we?
Yeah. So whether it is through the, just the fluoride and the poison of the environment around us, or it actually has been genetic tinkering, and there's some evidence around that second and third chromosome
Yes.
being fused,
Mm.
and even some of the stuff I might touch on quickly, if you like, of the ancient Aboriginal um, stories and some of these Egyptian hieroglyphs that they've found in Australia. The people that can translate them talk about the star gods and tweaking genetics and that in what they can translate from these hieroglyphs, and it makes sense. There's so much about humans which just doesn't, all our faces are different compared to other animals, like hair color, skin color. The fact that a lot of people do get burnt easily by the sun. So there's all these things about our physiology, menopause compared to a lot of other mammals. There's just so many things. The list goes on where you can name about why humans appear to be not really meant or evolved naturally in this environment. Yeah.
I totally agree with that. And I'm a good example of that, because I burn in the sun immediately. I eventually get a little bit of color in my skin, but I do burn quite badly, and I have hay fever, so on the nicest day of the year, I'll go outside and my eyes are streaming and I'm sneezing and I'm lactose intolerant. But
Yeah.
I'm kind of sort of trying to pretend I'm not and just tolerating it to an extent and thinking I'll just build up an immunity or somehow. But I think if I've evolved to meet my environment, I'm not a very good example of that being successful because it's failed. And of course, if we know that the sun is perhaps the most important thing we most important part of our lives is the sun, the most powerful, to burn us when we go in it for long periods of time, or in my case, not that long actually, is very, very clever. If that's actually been created to do
Yeah.
that, to prevent us from getting enough vitamin D by burning us as a direct result of exposure, what an incredible trick they've played.
Yeah, I know, right? And then and the moon as well. I mean, that's a whole nother rabbit hole about
God, isn't it just?
and women's cycles aligning, and there's no,
Mm.
Western science explanation for this stuff. And oh, the moon's another crazy rabbit hole. I still don't know where I fall on. There's so many good docos that present different arguments on that as well. Yeah.
I'm the same with the moon. Some people say that it's that we're actually looking at an image, that it's not real, it's a hologram, it's projected. Some people say that there's a dark side to it with bases on there, and when Buzz and Neil landed there, they were told to leave and were scared to death of
Yeah.
because of what they saw. Then we got that clip that's been circulating for years of Buzz telling that school kid that they never went. Um, you don't know what to believe. Some people say that there is nothing out there. It's all fake,
Yeah.
and some people say, well, no, it's proven. It's blah blah blah. I don't know what to think. What do you have a gut feel on it? Do you think it's actually
Oh,
something we can land on and wander around?
I honestly don't, but one of the craziest things is just, some of these 100 times zoom cameras where people are zooming right in and seeing some weird things. But some of the newer cameras have got the digital, like autocorrect, autofocus, and it won't even show you, it'll recognize that you're trying to look at the moon and then kind of show you the HD image it thinks you should be seeing. Have you seen some of these new cameras and software and phones? Yeah, yeah, yeah.
No.
So that's pretty crazy. And again, the opposite. If they've gone to the moon, why can't they turn around with 100 times zoom camera and really zoom in and show us some stuff? And there's meant to be 70,000 satellites, and why isn't there any good live streams or zooming in showing people upside down or sideways, in Australia and that type of thing. So these are all the kind of crazy questions about space, right? But Australia just gave Australian of the Year to the astronaut, who's one of the astronauts who's the first Australian meant to be going to the moon soon, I think, as part of that new crew. So um, have you seen that? There's meant to be 4 people going back to the moon soon, but I mean, every president said that, haven't they, since we went, that they're going back soon. So who knows what'll come
Yeah.
of that?
And apparently NASA destroyed the technology that got them there. Well,
Yeah.
that doesn't make any sense. And then, of course, we've got Stanley Kubrick and so on. Will we ever find out any of this? I kind of live in the hope that one day we'll wake up and everything will be exposed. That there
Yes.
won't be anywhere else for them to hide, and too many people will be aware. But that then throws into the scenario the problem of people who have gained a qualification in history or science, or perhaps astronomy, for it to be disproven, or at least their belief, what they were taught and what they've been teaching, to be complete fabrication. So if I've got for example, if I'm a history lecturer at Oxford University and my specialist subject is Mongolia, to find out that actually it was Tartaria and everything I've been teaching people is a lie, then my qualification is now totally irrelevant. My whole career is
Yes.
flushed down the toilet, There are people out there that would be laughing and mocking me. So it will be very interesting to see
Yeah.
what happens.
I think ego death, though, is one of the most powerful things you can go
Mm,
through to make you an authentic person. And like I said, from me going from the farm system, admitting that, hey, this is all BS, goes the same for these historians. And you got to do a lot of that self work, and a lot of time meditation, breath work, plant medicines, that ego dissolution to be okay to be wrong, and happily admit that you're wrong and you've learnt more and you've changed your mind. I think the world could benefit if everyone, and I think a lot of those old cultures, that's why they did these psychedelics annually or whatever as part of these rituals and ceremonies and that they did. So if there's some sort of big, that's called a happy reset, where people are happy to admit we've been lied to, people start doing those types of things and the self-development work, and then maybe all those teachers are the ones that are leading the battle on the Tartaria front going, wow, everything that we got taught at uni was wrong. And we don't, we only learnt what we only knew what we could know. We never realized we were lied to. And that's what I see with my doctor and pharmacist friends. A lot of them are waking up, a lot of them have quit. And the other half, I think they're good people. They think that, we're cookers and crazy, but they're doing what they truly believe. I got taught at uni. I got the good grades at school. I paid my uni degree. I'm on a good wage now as a doctor. They really don't want anything to change and to have to tell
no.
their wife that I'm quitting my high paying job as XYZ because everything I taught was bullshit sort of thing.
Yeah, I totally agree. I had a really encouraging email from Gareth Ike yesterday, and he told me that his dad, David, is now researching Tartaria, and he's starting to
Oh,
talk
awesome.
about it, and that's good because his voice is a lot louder than anybody else's
Oh man,
that's
isn't
talking
it?
about
Yeah.
Tartaria, and I thought that's absolutely fantastic to hear that maybe that will help gain momentum because he's been asked to go on to Joe Rogan's show. He's been
He
invited to.
has he? I heard him on Twitter the other day. He said he'd been asked and then he replied and never heard back and he was worried they're going to ghost him. But man, that would be the most popular Rogan episode of all time, wouldn't it?
Yeah, and it
Have
put
you
and it
spoken to David Icke?
yeah then
Are you,
yes only um only on Zoom a few months ago, but I'm working with Gareth and Jamie. They're turning my first book into a documentary, and they're
oh,
going to
that's
be
awesome.
filming it this year. Yeah, so but no, I've never met David. I've only spoken to him over Zoom.
That's amazing, mate. Well done. I can't wait to see that doco. And again, I think that's the next phase. A lot of these docos that we watched back on the day were just sort of like low budget and people putting evidence together for the 9/11s or the whatever. But chemtrails, climate trails being on Amazon Prime is a good example of something that's pretty well done on a mainstream streaming service. And if we start to get these really good high production quality with the music and all that, and they're on Netflix all of a sudden, bang,
Yeah,
a lot of my friends that have really woken up quickly when you do show them the Tartaria thing or a good 9/11 or COVID doco. Man, can you imagine if the top 10 docos on Netflix were like COVID, Tartaria, whatever, it would just be a
yeah,
very rapid waking up at that point.
yeah. It would, wouldn't it? And a very very expensive exercise for the companies that are involved in making, you know, people comply. You imagine that there was an expose on Netflix about COVID, what the stock prices would look like for companies like Moderna and AstraZeneca and so on. It would be well, it would ruin them, wouldn't it, overnight? It would actually destroy a lot of very, very large, powerful companies. But that would be
Yeah.
wonderful to see because our old Prime Minister was involved with Moderna, Rishi Sunak.
Yeah.
He was,
Yeah.
he was involved in. I can't remember if he was working as some sort of financial advisor for them, involved in the shares, the selling of the shares or something. But there was some connection.
Australia was deeply involved as well. I think Monash or one of the labs in Victoria was the first one to code COVID's genetic sequence and that type of thing as well. So Australia's putting heaps of money into mRNA COVID vaccine upscaling and research and production here. So yeah, we seem to be very much a test bed for all this new world order. stuff, as you've seen recently with the new hate speech laws, as you saw in lockdowns with people getting shot with rubber bullets that weren't wearing masks,
Yeah,
and um, the
yeah,
guns that we touched on, the first country to have their guns taken away. And maybe, I don't know if you've got a couple of minutes left, you want me to share screen? I'll kind of share
yeah.
it just
Sure. Yeah.
quickly. Uh, application, entire screen, that's what I want. Cool. So, can you see that?
I can.
Oh, awesome. So, just quickly, there's a couple of rabbit holes for people to go down. I'm having these guys, father and son combo, Evan and Stephen Strong, on next week. And they have spent, Stephen, the dad, has spent like 30 years, I think now, plus, finding ancient relics that disprove Australian history. So, this is an old Chinese relic they've found, and they go and get the metallurgy done. And again, it's showing up all these weird allies and stuff that doesn't make sense. And I think they even said some things that were elements that were unknown to science. So I'm looking forward to having them on. But they've got a YouTube channel, Forgotten Origin, and they believe that everyone migrated out of Australia, that we are the oldest living culture with the Aboriginal people. And he's got a 6-part series here on Egyptians in Australia. This is in Gosford in New South Wales, and it's just been destroyed 2 years ago, I
Oh
believe.
wow.
I don't know exactly how much was been destroyed, but I'm still going down this rabbit hole, which started a long time ago, and working my way through. But yeah, this is very clear hieroglyphs on all these stone structures that were in the Australian bush. They tried to discredit it and say it was a hoax and all this type of stuff. And they found the guys that first found it that work for Parks and Wildlife. Anyway, they've proven that this is very much Egyptian style stuff. And they're also, Chinese relics, evidence of the Phoenicians, just the Dutch. There were so many people here before, the British and the
Oh
Rothschilds
yeah.
and the official history starts. So this was another bit of Aussie legend, Rex Gilroy, who went and did his thing out in the outback, finding different, giant footprints, ancient kind of structures that don't add up to what we're told. He did this video, Phoenicians in Australia 3,000 years ago, and found some places and regions that look like they were old kind of docks that are just like deep in the Australian outback on the coast, and that type of thing. So these are all just easy to find on YouTube if you search
Yeah.
these titles or those names that I mentioned. But just quickly, if people want to watch this video I did the other day, Australia's Hidden Occult Secrets, some crazy stuff in Australia about the New World Order and Australis Project, 1829, started there. And then I'll let people watch this video full if they want. But one of the most interesting rabbit holes that I went down when I was researching and finding this was Canberra, which was our capital, has
Hmm.
just got all this similarity to the Vatican, Washington, D.C. You got your Freemason compass, X marks the spot. The Australian flag originally had 6 stars, and you guys know what the 6-pointed star means.
Yeah.
Canberra's radio station is 666. There's all this gematria, 33s and 66s in all the names. There's the pyramid there, the big flagpole like the obelisk. There's a good one here of the Snake's Head. That's the capital in the Black Pyramid. This is Canberra, the Parliament House building with the snake eyes like the Vatican, the Snake's Head, pointing towards the double pyramid. The double pyramid there's got the, one sec, we'll get to that. There's Aleister Crowley magic and the T in that as well. But this here's got 2 of these Maltese crosses, 2 sets of 3,
Yeah.
which is, the Knights of Malta,
Yeah.
Jesuits, all that type of thing. So, yeah, I'll let people watch that video in full. You've got the hour there on a 33-degree lean. But, yeah, just the occult symbolism in Canberra kind of blew my mind. Feel free to stop sharing for me, Guy. I've lost you.
Yeah. Have you gone?
I'll go full.
I don't know if I can stop.
Share. Oh, it looks like it has stopped sharing on my end.
So it should be at the bottom because obviously I can still see you in the corner, but your screen's still up. So you should be able to turn off the share option at the bottom, I think.
Oh, okay. Stop share. Sorry. I have not. I use a different program. Is that better?
Yeah. Perfect.
Sorry, I haven't used Zoom for this for ages. But yeah, that was a wicked rabbit hole for me. And there's something very spiritual about Australia with the stories that the Aboriginals tell There's obviously been a huge war on them to try and get them addicted to drugs and alcohol and all that in our communities. But I have friends that are still passing on those stories. There's places that they say are still full of 7, 8, 9 foot tall Aboriginals that have never seen civilization, and a lot of these places are these huge national parks which are entirely off limits to the public.
Of course they
But
are.
these people have been there because Aboriginal people can still get special passes to visit them, and they said there's ancient structures here, giant megafauna. They've still seen like the hugest crocodiles and that type of thing. So, yeah, it's just a lot of mystery still. Australia is just scattered with people living on the coast, and like 99% of it is kind of empty and outback and bush and yeah.
What happens if you do venture into one of those parts that's off limits? I mean, are there people patrolling, or could you get in there and
This friend of mine said he could get a permission to take us there in a helicopter, but we would not be allowed to film or take any photos or anything. So that might be something that I'd do. I don't know how heavily they are patrolled, but Kakadu National Park, which was like a tourist destination recently, all got kind of taken away for the public. Uluru Ayers Rock, you used to be able to walk up on it and all that, and that's kind of slowly been peeled back as well. The guys that tried to go south towards Antarctica from Perth, they absolutely got pulled up by one of the patrolling vessels that doesn't let you go to the ice wall down that way. So that obviously gets heavily patrolled. But no, I don't know. Obviously, places like those Gosford hieroglyphs, when people got found, they weren't patrolled or off limits at all. And since then, they've been destroyed. Fires have gone through there
those?
conveniently. And yeah, so it's important we try and keep this old knowledge like everything, right?
It's a bit like you said with regard to the Smithsonian Institute, and obviously the Vatican vaults. Why do people have a right, or why do these groups of people have a right to tell us where we can and can't go? I mean, for example, Antarctica, why can't we go there? Why can't we just charter a boat and go there and have a wander? For someone to say we can't go there, it would have to be their property, in which case, we would be entitled to see the deeds that they own the property. And to tell you you can't go into a national park, well, you're going to have to show me I'm trespassing, which would involve you showing me proof that you own the land, which you can't. So you have no right, and that's one thing I think we need to get into these parasites' minds, is that they're telling us what we can and can't do, where we can and can't go, with actually no right whatsoever to do so.
No, and I think it's in the original, Commonwealth laws or the at least human rights where they actually ban making licenses and permits for this sort of stuff. In Australia and a lot of places, you're not allowed to throw in a line and catch a fish. You're not allowed to go to a national park without a pass and a license. Just all these things that we kind of take for granted now in the Matrix, where you stop and think about it, you're just doing this simple action in nature. And I know you're not allowed to do that. You've got to pay the government money. And we saw last summer in Canada and that, right, where you're not allowed to go because it's dangerous now. There's a fire warning, so you're not allowed to go into nature, or it's going to flood, or you need to pay for the pass. But even then, right, if they say it's off limits and it's dangerous, it's just herding us into 15-minute cities. And
Yeah,
yeah.
it is. So where is the best place for people to find you?
So Nuggets News YouTube is our main channel. Alex Saunders on X is my second biggest platform, and then I try and post little shorts to TikTok and Instagram and that as well. But yeah, YouTube seems to be the main audience where we do those longer style interviews and those episodes like breaking down different topics, like I just said then, and have great guests like you on the channel too, Guy.
Yeah. Well, what I'll do is I'll put some links in the description so people can follow you unless they already do. But thank you, Alex. Thanks so much for joining us. And I imagine it's quite late there now. You probably need to be going to bed soon.
I will be, but thanks so much for having me. And yeah, you give me some good news with the David Icke stuff, and there's this Tartaria doco coming out with your book and that. That's awesome. So well done.
Thank you. Yeah, and thanks again for your time. And I'm sure we'll be speaking again soon.
Cheers, mate.
Take care now.